you, Mr Chair. I move that the question be now put.
I'm going to take the honourable member Gareth Hughes.
Mr Speaker, just to continue my call from before, in the first section I talked about the first reason why I proposed this SOP, because of the substance, it's bad law, eminent legal professionals have said it breaches international law. And in this short slot, I want to talk about the process, because that's been equally shocking. Mr Chair, what we're seeing is lawmaking at its worst by a new minister, started by the former Minister Heatley. This SOP, the Petrobras Amendment, the Anadarko Amendment, was announced on Easter Sunday on the television. It got absolutely no select committee scrutiny because it's being introduced as an SOP. And even this afternoon, when I put a motion to this House that we recommit this bill to select committee just to consider this specific amendment, we could have had a constrained time. This government refused leave to be sought because they don't want to have select committee scrutiny. They don't want to put the detail in front of the public. They are ashamed of it, Mr O'Rourke. They don't want to hear from the legal experts because they'd rather keep their eyes over their hands over their eyes, their fingers in their ears, blind to international legal law, blind to the experts, because they don't want to have the questions answered. So we haven't seen any select committee process, which is traditional with something of such far-ranging constitutional, democratic and human rights significant implications. Of course, because it's amendment, we've seen no Bill of Rights Act vet, which is traditional with first reading legislations, which we're avoiding entirely because it's been introduced as amendment. Now, what we saw tonight, I think, was shameful for a democracy. We saw the Attorney-General crack a couple of jokes with the Energy Minister and the Chair, said he had a quick perusal of it and then went to slander some of our most eminent legal professionals, including former Prime Ministers. Mr Speaker, I'm sure they've got thick skin and they see the politics behind it, but I think it's a shameful display that the Attorney-General could treat such eminent New Zealanders, including a New Zealander of the Year, with such disdain, Mr Speaker. He's not even doing his job, which is, as Attorney-General, running a Human Rights Bill of Rights Act lens over legislation. I think we should have done this. And again in the House, the Minister declined my invitation that he invite the Attorney-General to run a Bill of Rights Act vet across it. Mr Speaker, what we've seen is a slander and impugning experts, which I think does them no good. What we've seen is an incredibly rushed process, only introduced on Easter Sunday. Now we could see it passed in a matter of weeks. The Minister couldn't even get examples of why it's needed. He says the industry haven't been complaining about it, they haven't been requesting it. So what's the rush? Why can't we have a select committee hearing on it? Why can't this be introduced as a standalone piece of legislation with the appropriate right select committee hearing and Bill of Rights Act vet? But I guess the real question is, what's the Minister got to fear? What's he worried about? What are the answers he's worried about hearing? And maybe that's the entire problem. He is worried what the answers are, because the legal eminent professionals say it probably breaches international law and it is an attack on our key democratic rights. I guess the question for the Minister and the Chair is, did the Minister bother of getting a Crown Law legal opinion? Did he go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade and request their legal briefing over it? If he did, he should table it. They should have nothing to hide. If he didn't, I think, again, it's a shocking abuse of a rushed process to support their mates in the oil industry from afar. What it does, of course, is opens up New Zealand to years, potentially, of legal cases as these dubious laws are challenged in the court. The third point I want to touch on is the agenda, what's driving the supplementary order paper behind this Crown Minerals Bill. And despite the grotesque, egregious nature of this SOP, you know what, Mr Chair, I actually see this as a sign of fear from the government benches. I see it as a sign of weakness. I see it the government's actually losing the debate, because the fact is their oil drilling plan for this country is in tatters. Apache's gone, Anadarko is delayed, Petrobras is gone, Phil Heatley's gone. They're losing the debate, and what this SOP does is send a very clear message to New Zealanders, which is that protest is feared by the oil industry. They fear Kiwis standing up and exercising their democratic right. It sends a message to New Zealanders that protest works. We've seen it in the Southern Ocean this season, where Japan only caught 103 whales. They were trying for 1,000, but protesters stopped it. We've seen it in New Zealand when we stood up for Pacific nuclear test-free zones. We've seen it with bottom trawling, where I did what the government refused to do and go out to the high seas and stop deep-sea bottom trawlers, and now that's been banned between New Zealand and Chile. This SOP is a challenge to protesters. It works, the industry's fearful of it, and I think protesters aren't going to step aside. I think they're just going to ramp up the actions, because what they love, which is our beaches, our marine environment, they want to protect it. They're standing up for it. So despite the government doing everything they can...
Mr Chair.
I call the honourable member Kimawal Bakshi.
I move the question